All my kids. That part of the kids. Yeah. No,
Better.
mine
Cool.
were,
Was that Dave?
I had to go one military, and then when
They both hated it.
they came back to college, and they were my actual job is and when that
A little honey on it, maybe.
from the shop.
That's not the guy that worked with my
My back spot. I noticed there was something about the
I don't know how it came up in
There's
conversation.
just a
We were talking.
bunch
And there's this little Mexican place on the corner. Put it over the corner. It was.
Oh, wait. Oh, so you'll still have some. It's
Yeah, that was it.
He's there. But I do.
He felt better.
Are you going to Okay. And I went into it. It kind of cracks in the face when I take all your twenties and pull the whole thing. But it has to break away
Not
from
very
your
color
jaw.
coordinated.
Or you create another crack.
These are the compliments I grew up with.
They look fine.
Hey, big boy!
See, but it's
Those are not for grandma. Those are not for grandma.
He's all. Minutes rest.
First for hunting. Health extensions.
Okay, I can start.
And my oldest boy is 6.
I'm here too.
Sure.
I'm filled every day.
I just worry about fish. Worry about No, I have,
Say hi. Hello. You are Jason. You are. Okay.
It's not helping, but.
Who's there?
We're gonna try something new. We're gonna get started on time.
Doing swimming helps a lot.
Well, kid. What's that?
That means we're gonna quit early though. Okay. Too much glare.
Feel better from all she loves them in church.
Yeah.
Nice to see you today.
He was like a storm with the rest of
There, much better. Okay, Effie, we're just waiting on you.
Yeah, that's right.
We're just waiting on you.
And
I would be there. Hey, Adam. Adam, clerk, can you close just the left door? Yes. Thank you. This one or that one? This one. There. Too much glare. I get it. Okay.
Thank you.
As soon as Alvin's done, we can get started. Waiting on you, Alvin.
said it.
Okay, we're gonna do, I'm doing class today. The way I do it is I do it with, most of the time with some kind of a title. So today's title and subject is, I titled it, An Unchanging God in a Changing World. And as we go along, you guys will figure out why. The primary scripture is going to be Hebrews 13:8, which Anthony put up on the board. So Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So that's pretty much plain and self-explanatory. You hear some people say, well, you know, they go along and do certain things or don't do certain things. And they say, well, you got to change with the times. You know, or they'll tell you, oh, that's old-fashioned. We don't do that anymore. You know, I got an uncle that lives here down about 2 miles from me. We had a discussion a while back. He had a niece or a grandniece, one or the other, that living with their boyfriend, pregnant, and then he makes the comment, he goes, well, you know what, it's made the same basic comment, well, it's, 2022. We're beyond that now. And I said, wait a minute. I said, what do you mean we're beyond that now? Hebrews 13:8, Jay, it's just the starter one. So, we just got started, so. I go, what do you mean? We don't do that anymore. We're beyond that. I go, explain that to me. He goes, well, just the same basic thing. This is, 2022, modern times, things have changed. I go, well, I said, maybe I can talk to you a few minutes and change your mind a little bit, or at least make you think. So we brought up a few things. We had about a good 20, 25-minute discussion. I don't think I changed his mind, but I gave him some food for thought, things along that line. So, Jane and Pam, my title is An Unchanging God in a Changing World. So we're going to talk about change and times and stuff like that. Well, one thing, change, whether it's good or bad, is always taking place. I mean, is that something we can pretty much agree on? Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. What's one way that could be described is with change? Anybody? Adam?
The one thing which I always, it was on one of those motivation posters, but I found that it would be applicable both for the change, as you said, both the good or the bad, and that is those who do not ride the wave of change will be swept beneath it. And one of the problems is sometimes even when there's things which you don't like, it's you're kind of forced to go with it a little bit, because if not, then more or less, the crushing water or the crushing wave is more powerful than you.
So, in other words, you may or may not get sucked under it or sucked into it, for lack of a better way. I'm sorry about the vernacular, but...
More or less, yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. One thing, and this is just me personally, that irritates me, is the change of this so-called modern music, if you want to call it music. Back in the day, not too long ago actually, I mean, music, it rhymed a lot, it had some kind of a meaning to it, especially country songs, they had a theme, so to say. Now, to me, and I may be wrong, and I know William, I think, is the younger one here, but I just call it that bebop music that I just can't stand. Most of it's cussing, a lot of it's about killing. Well, let's do this and this and this to the police, and basically everything, a lot of things against society,
Sex and drugs.
what it used to be the societal rules. So
What are you listening to?
what's that?
I said, what are you listening to?
No, I don't. Well, sometimes you'll be at a light and the car next to you.
Right.
You know, and so, I killed 3 cops last night. Or just that,
That's your rap music.
or just that thumpity. I just cannot stand that. You know, and I'm probably the only one in here that can't stand it. You know, and it's not all bad. I've heard some that's not too bad actually, but that's few and far between.
One of the things that, we need to be aware of is turning the TV on, especially if you have children, because Hollywood has made sin look so appealing, and they have become so desensitized to so much of what
Well,
we see.
Where does it say in Scripture what's good will be bad and what's bad will be good? You know, and I mean, and that's to me that's for the parents to control. You know, your kids, regardless of what age they are, granted, the younger they are, the more they absorb and the more they retain, good and bad. That's another thing, the kids. And it seems to me too that, and it's been going on for a while, maybe it's just my perception, but there's so many parents, too many parents, that want the police and teachers to raise their kids. You know, and that's... Oh, time out.
And I second that.
And that's just not right. And if you've been watching the news the last month or so, right or wrong, to me, they're trying to indoctrinate a lot of these young kids. They're not teaching math and science. I mean, some of them are, not everybody, but they're trying to ingrain to them all this. Well, if you really want to be a girl, we can do that, and that kind of stuff. That's not for teachers to be doing. At least in my opinion. I don't know if anybody has a different take on it.
I was reading an article yesterday that said some parents are raising their newborns children and calling them babies, a baby, instead of my son or my daughter.
No.
They're calling them
A baby? Yeah, a baby, they're not giving their child a sex.
non-binary.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing too that, not all change is bad. Some things are good. Some technological things, some inventions, things like that. But the United States, especially from my perspective, over many years, they want to be what they call PC. Well, I don't want to hurt this guy's feelings, or I don't want to talk about this. Somebody might get offended. And
We don't want confrontation.
I call them, touchy-feely. Well, maybe if it bothers you, maybe there's a reason for it. Let's talk about it. I got a couple of relatives that way that, if you tell them the sky is blue, they'll say, no, it's green. Just because. Things have just gotten too PC as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if I'm the only one in here that feels that way, or...
Well, it got PC a number of years ago. Now it's forceful.
It's beyond it.
Forceful now.
Yeah.
Because take a look at your emails these days and people putting on their pronouns. It's like, I don't care. It's why in their signature they're putting their pronouns. Are you a he, him, a she, her, or they, it?
Now, again, and I hate to pick on the schools, maybe Pam has a little insight, but a lot of that is forced upon kids in the schools. Back when I was still working, I'd go to these homes every now and then, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. They're the ones that are calling 911. I go, okay, well, who called? What do you want? Well, my mom was yelling at me, and my teacher says she can't do that because that's child abuse. And I go, are you kidding me? I said, you know what? You sit your little behind down there. I said, you and I are going to have a chat, And so I talked to him. My teacher, I said, I don't care what your teacher says. If you're right with the kid there, and I tell the mom, it's usually a single mom. I said, if your son or daughter, or whatever the case may be, is misbehaving, I says, you go ahead and whip them. I said, now there's a difference between discipline and abuse. I go, I whip my kids, you know, but that doesn't mean you hit them with the buckle of the belt. You know, you give them a couple swats, and that was usually it. And then after a certain time, they reached, 9, 10, 11 years old, my wife would say, well, wait till your dad gets home. You want to talk to your dad when he gets home from work? No. You know, so that replaced the belt. But it's us, and I told the kid right there in front of mom, I says, don't you ever call 911 because you don't agree with what your mom says. I says, because if it's me that's coming out here, me and you're going to take a ride to kitty jail. Now, how do you like that? No, I won't call anymore. I said, okay, make sure you don't. I says, your parents have a right to discipline you. Just because you don't like it, or your teacher says, no, they can't do that, that is not abuse, let me tell you. I said, you don't want to see what child abuse is, because I've seen it. So, any other comment? Pam? Did I cover it pretty good?
Yes, I mean, it is.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're in the schools.
It is, and it's to the point now where I am ready for a career change or an early retirement because I can't take it.
Yeah.
And it's very one-sided, and all of the focus that, 99% of your conversations or more, or your issues, have nothing to do with education.
Exactly.
It has to do with politics,
Exactly.
and it's frustrating.
Yeah. Okay.
Now tell her all the time, it doesn't change if you change the job. It's there.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar. I mean, ask Dan if he wants to go back to being an officer.
What? I didn't hear you.
Ask you if you want to go back to being on the police
I
force.
couldn't do it now, I'd be up in the chief's office every day. I mean, I was in the captain's office about once a week, but you know what? What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, you know? I mean, I could tell you stories. I had a sergeant one time says, well, I won't go into it a lot, but it said, she tells me, says, well, you can't. I go, wait a minute, don't go there. I says, we had a discussion. I said, there's many people that I know in the press. I said, would you like me to get a hold of them and have a 10, 15-minute meeting and a discussion? And we'll see where the chips fall. I go, because what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. Just because you don't agree with it, I'm sorry. You know, if you don't like it, fire me. I said, you'd be doing me a favor. You know, why you gotta be that way? And I said, just leave me alone. You know. But anyway, and like I said a minute ago, you know, a lot of times we hear the term about something that we don't like or people don't like, and they say, well, that's old-fashioned. That was back in the old days. But the Bible tells us in different scriptures, man has no authority to change the will of God on any subject. You know, can we agree on that? Or is there somebody that wants to? Robert? Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Man generally, too, seems to want to change what we don't like or agree with to suit themselves, like God's rules for our lives. I guess you can call them rules for lack of a better term, but the guidelines, the guide that we have here, as time went on, people would say, well, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. You know, certain things like within the church. Okay, Wayne, you have your Bible? Or Robert, can somebody look up Romans 12:2? And then another one after that is Proverbs 1:8. If somebody could get that. And then Isaiah 48:17. We'll concentrate on those three for right now. So Romans 12:2 will be the first one.
What was the one for Isaiah?
48:17. And then Proverbs 1:8. Somebody could look at that. Okay, you got Romans 12:2?
I do.
Okay, can you read that?
12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect.
Okay. You want to expound on that just a tad, or should we just go on? It's pretty much self-explanatory.
We just expounded upon it, came back down to a nugget, I would say.
Yeah.
Don't buy into this PC and tolerance and everything they're trying to get you to accept in the world. I mean, we know even Church of Christ congregations are now changing worship to appease.
So two people over here won't be upset, or one person over here will, won't rant and rave.
Or to pull in more people,
Well,
keep the kids,
hey, we
all
went,
of that.
it wasn't a Church of Christ, but it was, I forget, at the time, my older son's girlfriend her family invited us to church. And they go, well, I forget which kind of church it was, but, she goes, oh yeah, it's pretty much like what's taught at the Church of Christ. I go, okay, well, we'll try it one time. So we get over there, and they had, about 100 or so members in there. But service had started, been on in less than 10 minutes. Then all of a sudden, and I hadn't noticed it when we walked in, but all of a sudden there was the disco ball. I mean, do people know what a disco ball is?
Yeah.
You don't know what it is?
I know, it's the same.
Okay. This disco, they dimmed the lights and this disco ball started spinning around and I'm looking, I go, what is this? What's going on here? And then they had 2 long aisles and then pretty soon we had about a dozen or so people running down each aisle screaming and yelling. I go, what is going on here? And I tell Luke, I said, you know what? We'll stick around for a little bit. I said, I doubt we're going to be coming back. I said, I don't know what's going on here, but it's to me it's not church. But that's an extreme, I'd never seen that before. But you go, oh well, But as like Wayne touched on, people want to change things and, we're supposed to be more tolerant, more acceptable. But as time progresses on, Jack?
Finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
Well, to me, what the Romans thing is saying is that as you're being transformed, he was the old Jack when he was baptized, right? And now that old Jack is being replaced as I become more Christ-like.
Supposedly.
Supposedly,
Theoretically.
hopefully. That old Jack is being replaced with the new Jack, the new creation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the transformation from the worldly things to the spiritual things.
Yeah. But, and you'll hear some, and it's usually younger people, say, well, and I'm talking like 40 on down maybe, now that I'm up here. But, well, you know what, the church is too restrictive. They're always telling me what I can't do. I can't have any fun, if I'm a Christian. I go, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. We too much concentrate on the can't do this, can't do that. If we can teach more, what is the greatest commandment and the second one? Back to the Old Testament. If we teach that, all these other don't do's don't come up, right?
Shouldn't come up. But well, like Jack said a minute ago, you got the old Jack, and then there's a transformation. Now you have a whole new person. Does that mean Christian people can't go out and have fun? I mean,
We do all the time, though.
It's a different kind of fun.
Yeah, it depends on your interpretation, your translation. Yeah, I mean, you can go bowling, you can go hunting, you can go fishing or golfing or whatever. You don't have to go bar hopping Friday and Saturday and come home at 3 in the morning and puke all over your living room. That's a blast. I'd have a couple guys at work, I'll say friends, but I call them acquaintances. Apparently, go, what'd you do yesterday on the weekend? Oh man, I got ripped, and he was hugging the porcelain, whatever you want to call it. He says, yeah, I just got really ripped. I go, yeah, how do you feel right now? Well, yeah, I'm kind of hungover, but okay, do it again. That's like I had a nephew wanted to see what it was to smoke. So his dad gave him a little cigar. Well, he stole one of his dad's small little cigars. And he thought it was pretty neat. And I go, okay. So a few days later, I went and got one of them big old, nasty, raunchy cigars. I said, here, smoke this. And he took a couple of puffs, and He goes, no, this is the girl. So I says, no, I'm gonna sit here, you're gonna sit here, you're gonna finish it. So it took about 20, 30 minutes, and he did not like it. I
Yeah,
said,
you know,
okay.
I was in the principal's
I
office.
said, you ready to keep smoking? No, I'm done. I go, well, okay, it's not as cool as you think, huh? You know, but anyway, okay, who had Proverbs 1:8?
I can read.
Okay, Jack, thank you.
Hear my child, your father's instruction, but do not reject your mother's teaching.
Okay. And then I guess, Jennifer, you had Isaiah?
Nope.
Okay, well, I thought you were because you were asking me which
I've
one.
got it.
No, I didn't. I was already.
Who's got it?
I do,
Pam, okay.
but you gotta tell me the verse again. 48.
Isaiah 48:17.
This is what the Lord says, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. I am the Lord your God, who teaches you what is best for you, who directs you in the way you should go.
Okay. To me, pretty much self-explanatory. I mean, I always equate the parent down here to the parent up there, our supreme parent. You know, we have guidance, we have guidelines, we have boundaries. We may not always like it, but it's for our own benefit. Just like when your kids, usually when they're small, don't do this, don't do that, you know, and you know, you're taking away their fun, you know, but do we do it? Do we tell them certain things, there's certain things not to do to be mean? No, there's usually something behind it. Usually.
Yeah. If you're loving your neighbor, you're not stealing, right? So we look at do not steal. Well, that's based on loving your neighbor, which is the greater commandment, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking, you reprimand your kids in the store, it's because they are disrespecting somebody else. You love your neighbor, you're teaching them to love your neighbor by not tripping them up and giving them.
I'll tell you what I did one time when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I don't know why I remember this. I went with my mom to the grocery store, and as I'm walking along, I saw some comic books I wanted. And there's about 3 or 4 of them, so I folded them and I stuck them in my pocket. My pockets were bulging out, and then I got an ice cream that I wanted. Stuck that in my back pocket. Pretty soon it started melting. So we get to the front of the counter, the cashier, and the girl looks and she goes, "Do you have something you're not supposed to?" And I go, "No." I said, "I'm good." And then my mom looks and my pant, you know, the ice cream was all melted and my pockets were all bulging out. And, you know, I thought I was being slick, but, you know. Anyway, I got taught a pretty good lesson over that one. But anyway, just like we touched on, it's up to the parent to guide and teach their children. You know, do they always like it? No. Do we always like it? No. Not usually. But I equate that, like I said, the parents should be setting the boundaries and the guidelines for the children. Now, when they say, "No, I'm not going to do that," or they get rebellious, do we just go, "Oh, okay, well, that's okay. I didn't really mean it," you know? And then your problem, behavior just progresses, you know? Or do we try to put a stop to it and say, "Hey," I always had the thought process with my kids, when they did something wrong or they were disobedient, I would tell them, but then I would explain to them why it's wrong or why we don't do that. Don't just say, you know, "You can't do that." Well, let me tell you why that's not acceptable. Then they seem to understand it a little better. So, I won't have any intake on that. Okay. I mean, yeah, can't just ignore it. And a lot of times, there's a term, you know, that we need to be what we call rebuked. It doesn't mean we're, well, rebuke and discipline is pretty much the same thing. It's a learning process, but we don't abuse the kids, just like we wouldn't want it either. You know, when we're disobedient to God, do we want a lightning bolt to come down and, you know, maybe hit the ground a foot from us? You know, is it that much of a reminder to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing? I don't like you doing that. You know, some people, maybe they need to get hit over the head. Robert?
Well, rebuking is a strong reproof. It's-
And it should be.
It is, and we need a strong reproof,
Mm-hmm.
from time to time. It is discipline, but it's discipline that's needed.
Yeah.
And that if we don't have, we will surely go wrong.
Well, you can see it now. Just watch the news, any of the news channels.
Well, we've been that way for a long time now.
You know, and you know, I can see, and it's usually like an age group, 15 to 25, somewhere in that general range. But I have to think sometimes that, you know what, it may not be these 5 guys' fault. What did they learn in the home? You know, did they learn or they get taught, hey, you shouldn't be taking stuff that's not yours? Do we, you know, beat up somebody that we don't like what they said? You know? And that to me, it's a lack to, and from my point of view, it's a lack of parental guidance that causes a lot of these problems.
Sure, that's the source of the problem, and, but at times we need to address the problem at hand. So the child is the one that has the problem, even though it might not have been his or her fault in the beginning that he or she was taught that way.
Yeah.
But it has to be dealt with at that point in time.
Yeah.
And then you have to back through and find out where the source is.
Where the root cause is, yeah, because I went to this one house, kid was about 14, 15. Didn't want to go with what the mom, her rules basically, so I go over there. Have a chat with him, spend about 10 or 15 minutes. And then I tell the mom, I go, look, I'm going to be realistic with you. I cannot come here and give you 15 or 20 minutes and fix a problem that's taken you 10 years to create. I go, I just can't do that. But let me see what I can do to help you. So during the conversation, it turns out this kid loves basketball. I says, okay. I said, I'll make a deal with you. I said, I got a friend in Sacramento. He owns the Sacramento Kings basketball team. They're putting on a basketball camp next week. If you do A, B, and C, I said, I can't promise you, but I'll make a couple phone calls and see if I can get you in that camp. I said, kid, are we on the same page here? Can you do that? Can you do what your mom says? He goes, yeah, I can do that. So anyway, make a long story short, I got him in the camp, took him to the camp. It was a 2-week camp, and I took him every day. But at the end of it all, never went back to that house. And about 2 or 3 months later, I called the mom. I said, hey, how's, little Jimmy doing? Oh, he's doing great. Goes to school now, doesn't cut school, does all his homework, does, he's right in line with where he's supposed to be. And she goes, I just want to thank you again. I said, well, he always had it in him. He just needed a little push in the right direction. And if I'm in a position to be able to do that, I got no problem helping you do that. But, that was kind of a rare occurrence. Not everybody I've dealt with was like that.
Amen.
But at least I helped out one kid.
The idea of what you learn at home is one aspect of
Yeah.
the sins of the father are visited on later generations.
Yeah.
If the parents drinking, partying, stealing, how they make their living and all that, that's not good.
Yeah.
That's what their kids learn as the way that life is, and it just perpetuates without intervention like what you just.
That's like I deal with a lot of these thug people. Not now, but before. The pants down to here, the shirts down to here, and, the bebopping and all that. And every once in a while I go to a house and I see the little 2 or 3-year-old boy like that. And I look at the dad, I says, what are you doing? I go, he's gonna follow right behind you. I said, I'll be chasing him in 10 more years. Is that what you want? Well, I don't want my son, I don't want him making the same mistake I did. I don't want him doing the same things I did. Well, then fix this, you're just perpetuating everything. I said, let's put a break on it and give your son a chance. You know, and he's only 2 or 3 years old, and he's walking, you know, doing the bebop, and he got his pants down to here, and I said, you're not helping him. You're not helping him at all.
And sometimes the parents are not there, so the kids are being raised by the TVs.
And the teachers.
And so they're replicating what they see on the TVs, stealing, gangs, and all of that nonsense.
Okay, and moving along, the world's what it is, but we don't have to go along or ignore what's wrong or not right. I mean, we can change little pieces at a time, you know? It's like they say, the horse that pulls the wagon, each step is one step closer to wherever they're going. You know, it all starts with one step. You know, you can't ignore it, or you shouldn't ignore it. Okay. Can somebody look up 1 John 2, 15 through 17? Or did we already do that? Okay, 1 John 2, 15 through 17.
Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away, and also its lust. But the one who does the will of God abides forever.
And that's just what I touched on a little bit ago. There's so many younger people, the generation behind us. Well, you're taking away my fun. You're telling me everything I can't do. Well, why you gotta go out and do this? Why don't you learn how to go bowling or take up golf or fishing or whatever? You know, there's all different ways to have a good time. You know, I mean, I think that's pretty well cut and dry. And then a lot of times when a person does or thinks about doing what's contrary to God's word, with what Robert just read, they try to justify it and say to themselves, well, God's going to understand, it's okay. God's good, isn't he? He can overlook this. You know, it's all right. You know, God, there's a good God. Go ahead, Al. I was going to call you Al. Wayne. I thought you had your...
No, but ask Nadab and Abihu how off you can be.
Mm-hmm.
They add a little incense to kind of smell nice or something, I don't know what it is.
Put lipstick on a sour, how does that work? It's still a pain.
Who's somebody's grandson that steadied the ark on its way back to Jerusalem, or on its way to Jerusalem, and not supposed to do that. Didn't work out
Well,
so well.
sometimes the rebuking or the discipline is harsh, and sometimes it has to be.
When God says to do it that way,
You know,
you gotta do it that way.
and just to go back to our beginning scripture, God's not going to change for us. We are the ones that have to change. God has been consistent from day one. And like I was telling my uncle, if it was wrong back then, it's wrong now. Adam?
I was going to say probably one of the best references for biblical stories, I would say, would be the story of Jonah. When you think about he was given the message of, hey, you're going to go and deliver this message, you're going to go across the sea. He said, no, I'm not going to. Then had a whale swallow him up in 3 days. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, you know, not everybody has, well, I'm going to call it an advantage. It was for me, and maybe Jack as well, but just the jobs that we had, the environments we were in, the people we would come in contact with. There was, for me anyway, there was tremendous opportunity to, hey, let me talk to you for about 10 minutes. You know, after I dealt with whatever was going on. Let me talk to you about 10 minutes about something. And then at least make them think, you know. Because, you know, I would deal with, wrong term, but I'd call them the scum of the earth. misguided probably, but, sometimes it is what it is, but,
Our oldest son keeps telling us that we don't understand the world because we're older, and people are this way now, and this is how they think, and all of that, you know? And it's like.
gotta change with the times, right?
Yeah, it's like you can choose who you spend your time with.
Mhm.
You know, we prefer to spend our time with brothers and sisters in Christ. You know, he hangs out with a group of people who are, you know, doing that whole liberal thing and drugs and this and that and everything else. And he's telling us that we're wrong. So,
I would tell people like that, I mean, people that are in that type of situation, after I talk to them, I say, well, whatever the problem and their issue is, I go, how's that working out for you? Is it working out good?
Those words have been spoken.
Well, you know, I can't walk down the street without, you know, turning to see who's behind me every 10 seconds. You know, these guys over here, because they live 2 streets over, they don't like us, so, you know, they're gonna come shoot at us. Or every time a car, a particular colored car, whatever, drives by, you gotta look and say, oh man,
Or a car
I got past another one, you know? And that's a terrible way to live, you know? I mean, there's consequences for the lifestyle you choose, but it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Luby has,
And you
Oh.
know, at home, where we're from the Yakima Reservation, it's really gotten bad with drugs and everything. I mean, anyway, I'd be saying something and they say, oh, you're old school. You're real old school. You need to get up with it. I look at him, I said, I don't have to sit on that phone. I don't have to be on that kind of talking. I said, I don't even like to watch TV. I said, because it's too much, you know, out there.
my wife has a nephew, this was quite a few years ago when he was about 17 or 18. Dressed the costume, I call it, you know, these thugs. Good kid though, did good in school, didn't hang around with these people, had a good part-time job. But then one day he was walking along, just minding, you know, wasn't doing anything, wasn't bothering anybody. And these 3 guys popped out of this one car, thought he was somebody else.
Yeah.
And would get in at bad times, started beating on him, comes home, tells his mom, and of course it trickles down to me. And I go, look, I said, I know you're a good kid. Why you want to look like that? Like these guys is beyond me. I says, but look what it got you. You weren't bothering anybody, you do good in school, you got a part-time job, but you're attracting this attention to yourself, and now look what happened. And then the next day, he wouldn't dress like that anymore. I said, okay, don't draw attention to yourself that you don't want, you know. But
I told Ryan that, you know, if you don't want to be treated like the character, don't play the character.
or they say, well, you're not treating me like an adult. I'm a grown man. Well, you know what? Act like one. Act like one. You know, don't act like you're, you know, still a freshman in high school. You know, I had one, was a friend of mine when I was working, and we went to high school together. Came across him accidentally when he was roughly about 40 years old, digging cigarette butts out of the gutter and stuff like that. And I just stopped and said, I wonder what this guy's doing. So I went and I talked to him, and I said, you're Dave, aren't you? He goes, yeah. I said, well, let me ask you a dumb question. What are you going to do with yourself? You know, oh, you wouldn't believe it. I said, okay. I said, but, you know, I'd love to talk to you. Well, I don't have time for that, and I don't want to hear it. And I said, okay, well, good luck to you then. I mean, here's my number. I'm available if you want to talk to me. That, you know, I'm not going to push you or force you to do anything. But some people just don't, you know, they get down to a place and they don't want to be helped. And then nowadays, too, to touch on what we were talking about, too many people are concerned about offending somebody instead of standing for what they know to be right. But there are times when we, as Christians, we should be offended. You know, when something's going on that's obviously wrong, do you stand back and say, oh, I hope that person's going to be okay? You know, or you know, intervene in some manner. But there's a lot of times when we're the ones that should be offended. But when we speak out about some things, then we have a tendency to be labeled as, oh, those people over there, those are a bunch of bigots, those are a bunch of hypocrites, you know? So people think, well, it's better not to say anything, you know?
You
I don't
can
want
get shot for it.
What?
You can get shot for it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it's,
It's easier to say something if you're living it.
and then one thing people will tell you, well, I'm only one person, what can I do? You know, but we can go back and take a look at one person. Jesus for one, Paul, Joseph, David.
Why don't we look at Andrew? Why don't we look at those other apostles as well? They're tremendous examples for us. We can influence one person.
Exactly.
We don't have to speak to try to influence a crowd.
And then
There are other
sometimes, a lot of
people-
times it'll go,
Absolutely.
you know.
So it is our responsibility when we see something wrong to try to correct it, but correct it in the right way.
Yeah.
If we correct it with anger, or if we correct it with loud reaction,
Or
then
haughtiness.
we're not gonna get the result that we're looking for. We have to address it with love, with patience, and with understanding. You were talking about on several instances when you've actually helped somebody, it wasn't through anger. It wasn't through anger, it wasn't through hate, but it was through love.
And there may have been more that I'm not aware of.
Sure.
You know, these are just people that have bothered to get back in contact with me. Well, let me tell you how little Susie's doing. Okay, great. If I can help you out anymore, or do something for you, let me know. Call me. I said, I don't mind, you know. But, and the bottom line is too, we're almost out of time here. Do we please man or do we please God? You know, and, you know, you can refer back to Isaiah 41:10 that God says, hey, fear not because, you know, I'm going to hold you in my righteous right hand. So there's no reason to be afraid, you know. And some other scriptures I got are Matthew 16:27, Romans 2:6, 1 Peter 4:5, that explain what we do. There's consequences to everything that we do, one way or the other, good or bad. And the bottom line is, who can read Romans 14:11? Somebody. And then if somebody else could look up 2 Corinthians 5:10, and we'll kind of conclude with that. And then one more, Matthew 7:21, and then we'll end on that note. So Romans 14:11.
I can take it, Romans.
Okay.
For it is written, as I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God.
Okay. And to go along with that, 2 Corinthians 5:10.
For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may be recompensed for his deeds in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad.
Okay, and then the last one, Matthew 7:21, which is pretty strong.
Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven.
Okay. Now, how would you like to get in God's presence, and he's going to say, hey, I don't know who you are. I don't know you. To me, that's pretty harsh. That's pretty harsh. And it's like I said before, there's two destinations where you can be, non-smoking section or the smoking section. That's the way I put it. Oh, you just now got that, huh? That's the way I put it. That's the way I put it. It's a little tamer than saying heaven or hell. But I said, well, you can go to sit in the non-smoking section or you can sit in the smoking section. It's your choice. There's consequences for everything that we do, good or bad. So, but the last one there, Matthew 7:21, not everyone that says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. I mean, like I said, that's pretty harsh. I mean, we don't think of that usually, and that goes along with other passages that I can do, that another lesson for another time, is it about being prepared. We got to be prepared for when it's our time. Because we don't know. We don't know. James 4:14 tells us, hey, what is your life but a vapor, but a mist? You know, like in the wintertime you exhale and it's there for 3 or 4 seconds and it's gone. So we don't know when that time is going to be. You know, I'm sure those people, and I hate doing this, but it's something that everybody can relate to, is 9/11. A lot of those people went to work like any other day, and look what happened. I mean, my boys and my daughter, but from the time they were still in high school and out of high school, when I leave for work, it's like, I wouldn't say it, but the implication was always there that, well, Dad's going to work, but maybe he won't come home tonight. You know? So, I mean, as old as my boys were, they each give me a hug. My daughter would give me a hug. Be careful. Because, you know, realistically, we don't know. I mean, I do all I can to come home, and there's been 8 or 9 times at least that I probably shouldn't have. I should have got killed. But I didn't.
Down in the Phoenix area, there is almost daily an article about somebody who died on Highway 17 or 10 or whatever down there. Not one of them planned that when they woke up that morning.
Well, just recently, if anybody's been watching the news, in North Carolina, there was 2 young police officers got killed, got ambushed and killed. So you don't know from one day to the next. I mean, law enforcement and fire departments especially, they don't know from one day to the next if they're going to, you know, finish off the shift. You know?
All kinds of first responders
Yeah.
have that, you know, they live that way. That's.
I would try to teach these younger officers, you know, I relate more to police officers. I said, play the what if game. And they go, well, what's that? I said, well, when you go somewhere, I mean, you have the computer screen and it tells you what kind of call you're going to. You're going to be at least 2, 3, 4 minutes on the road. Think about, well, what am I going to do if this guy does this? How am I going to react if this happens? I go, that's what I mean by playing the what if game. That way, if you're confronted with it, you at least had it in your mind a little bit. Not suddenly it's presented to you and it's like, oh, heck, what am I going to do? At least you formulated a little bit of something, you know. And some chuckle it off. I go, that's up to you. You go ahead. But I do it all the even though I've been here 25 years, I still do it. You know, because you never know. But, okay, any other closing comments or questions or opinions? I'm sure I haven't been correct in everything, but this is my viewpoint. Does anybody else have a comment they want to make?
I would just like to say thank you to this church. I can see why my son brought his son here. We have any churches at home, you can take him all over the place when you get home. You don't have to go home. And I really thank this home because he's ready to be in this church. So thank you. Thank you for my son visiting Alex in prayer. Every day he wakes up crying for his father. Tomorrow we'll make arrangements for him to go home and then we'll be on our way home. gave my son a walk on because that's what how he grew up on the reservation with the sacred church, the longhouse, and the Christian church in their home. I opened my children to all religions. And I'm happy that he's come to talk to us. He's come to visit us at his apartment. So I know he's with the Lord. We'll probably get him home. He'll be back on his reservation again. But he'll miss this place because he's kept us here all week. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you.
You said very well. We love you, son.
So let's just keep in mind as we conclude that, you know, God's not gonna change for us, and we shouldn't expect him to. We're the